evening, everyone. We'll get started here in just a second. We are just waiting on Danielle. There she is. We'll wait for April to turn her camera on and give me the thumbs up. She's ready to get started, and we'll get going here. Okay. Welcome to the Board of Directors of Desert Marigold School, officially known as the Valley of the Sun Waldorf Education Association, our meeting. I will read the opening verse and we'll get started. And Nellie, would you mind reading the closing verse this evening? Thank you. All right. The true aim of education is to awaken real powers of perception and judgment in relation to life and living, for only such an awakening can lead to true freedom. That is from Rudolf Steiner. All right. I am Gregory Schneider. I'm the board president. Let's go around and introduce everybody else, starting with Nellie.
Nellie Grosenbacher, board member.
Mr. Tanner.
John Tanner, board member.
And April.
April Sauer, board secretary.
And Danielle.
Hi, good evening. Danielle Martinez, board member.
Okay. Frank.
Frank Maurizio, executive director.
And Michelle.
Hi, Michelle Kratzer, parent council chair. Sorry.
Welcome, everyone. So we have a few topics to go over this evening. We have a number of budget and finance things to take care of. We'll hear from Frank about goings on at the school over the summer. We'll talk about the contemplation exercise, and then we'll approve our minutes from the last meeting. So let's jump right into it. We have a profit and loss to review, as well as a balance sheet. And these are tentative still, Monique tells us. Let me pull these up. I'll share my screen. Let me start with a P&L. Okay. All right, so here's our P&L for the entire fiscal year. This is still preliminary, but total income of $2.8 million. Then we have expenses for both our regular public school as well as our private program of $2.7 million, with our net operating income of about $170,000 in the black. But then we take the depreciation expense out of that, and it puts us down to about $20,000 in book income, which is great considering everything we went through this past year. To end the year in that kind of positive territory is good news. All right, let me flip over to the balance sheet. Okay, so as of the end of June, our total, and again, this is preliminary because of some other things Monique needs to take care of, but total bank accounts, 524,000, which includes a double payment from the state, because we got one at the beginning of June and then one at the end of June, which is the way the state does it, and we won't have one this month from the state. So for whatever reasons that the Department of Education needs to do it that way, that's the way it works. So we actually, that's a little bit higher than it typically is. All right, then we have some additional due from federal and prepaid expenses. Then we've got our fixed assets, land, buildings, that sort of thing, minus our accumulated depreciation, giving us total assets of about 2.6 million. And we've got our liabilities. So we've got some accounts payable, vendors and that sort of thing, a few minor credit cards. Then we have payroll, some leases, that sort of thing, totaling 108,000, which is pretty typical for the month. Excuse me, not for the month, but to have in total. And then our long-term liabilities is our mortgage, some community loans that we've taken are 1.4 million. So about $1.5 million in debt. And then, so then we have equity, which is, retained earnings, our net income from the year. And that totals out to 2.6 million again, which is liabilities and equity managed against the assets. That always gives you your balance sheet, so these should always be equal. All right, so that's where we are. Any questions on the P&L or the balance sheet? See people shaking their heads. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is really the biggest one fiscally this evening. Discussion and approval of the adopted budget for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. So Monique sent that around a few days ago. Does anyone have any questions about it this evening? Okay. In that case, I will move to approve the adopted budget for fiscal year 2022. I'll need someone to second that.
I will second.
Thank you, Danielle. And we lost Mr. Tanner at some point. Why don't we wait a second before we vote and see if we can hop back on.
Is Dan also missing to this evening?
Yep, Dan and Kirsten are not going to be able to make it. Let's see. Give it He says he's trying.
Frank, how was the tea today?
Your tea is outstanding. You should be bottling that stuff and selling it. Honest, it is truly a special tea. We got to stir it every once in a while, but there's a line at the pot because everybody wants more. It's very, very good. We appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tanner made it back. Welcome back. So I think you dropped off before I moved to approve the budget. Danielle seconded, if I'm remembering correctly. Any discussion on the motion?
No, I don't have any,
Okay.
but thank you.
All right.
My apologies about that.
No problem. All right. All those in favor? All right. The motion carries unanimously. Moving right along. An enrollment update. Frank, where do we stand just under a month out from the start of school?
We are at 292 enrolled with 16 others that have paperwork to enroll between 50 and 80% filled out. So we still could get 10 of those 16 and be at 302. And between you and I'm crossing my fingers for 300. I think that would be a wonderful start. So 292, 4 weeks away. Crystal spends every day calling those 16 people, seeing if they filled out one more piece of paper.
That's excellent. Yep. Tell her to keep up the great work.
I will.
All right. Let's see. And then the next thing we have, let's see. I have on here activity fees. I'm trying to find. Let's see. Frank, I know that you sent the field trips.
I included field trips and athletic fees. They're all on the same page.
Yeah, just trying to pull it up.
It was in an email, Gregory.
Ah, okay. So is that in your folder, April, or?
No, because it was just in the body of the email.
Okay.
Yeah, Gregory, I think I was answering you on something else and then included all of those fees on there.
Yes. I'm just trying to find it.
I've got it if you want me to read it. Because it was something you forwarded to me because it was a document that needed to go in the drive. Okay, so suggested fees for the after school program, $12 per day, KinderCare. That's number one from 12:15 to 2, $10 per day for KinderCare 2 to 3:30, $15 per day for grades 1, 2, 3. That's 2:15 to 3:30, $15 per day for circus, 2:15 to 3:30. All the rest are $15. Looks like homework lab, garage band, string, guitar, fencing, chess club, and then a blanket fee of $75 for athletics for grades 7 through 12.
Can I answer any questions about those?
Let's see. So these are all after school activities.
Correct. I've been getting enough phone calls about our day ending at 2 and that many people are back to work now and it is very difficult for them to get off work and come pick the kids up. Excuse me. So they're asking, will there be after school programs? And these are the ones we have thought of that we might be able to, or we have already have adults who are saying, I'll do that for you. And so we came up with a couple prices there. You will notice Aftercare 1 and Aftercare 2 are different prices. because there are some families that really will pick their kindergarten kid up at 2, but then about another 15 of them are saying, I need it till 3:30. And we didn't feel right charging them double, so we just added $10 to that. But in doing the math on how many kids we think are going to be in there, we should be able to self-support this. All of those programs would be based on collecting fees to pay our teachers and or aides to do this. With the exception of homework lab, I actually budgeted it in because I had a feeling we may not have as many kids in that. And I still had enough parents asking, can I have a place for my kids to do their homework with a certified teacher after school? And so I actually put that in the budget. So it's there. We'll collect the money in case it doesn't cover it, but all the other programs should cover it. And I don't think April read athletics. Athletics is $75 fee, and that typically pays for the coaches, which I'm in the process of getting people who want to coach. You will notice there are 2 levels of chess, the competitive level from junior high and high school, and we're also doing an after-school program for kids 3rd through 6th if they want to learn to play chess.
Excellent. And so, for context, the reason why we, the board, would approve these fees is so that people can allocate tax credit money towards them. And so the flip side of that is if we approve these fees, we also have to approve that Frank can waive the fees for any student for which it would be an economic hardship. And by doing that, it unlocks the vault, I guess, to being able to use tax credit money for these sorts of things. So with that said, any other questions on this? And if not, I'll go ahead, Nellie.
I just had a question for Frank. What do you have anything solidified for sports from 7 to 12 yet, or you're still in the process of finding coaches and figuring those sports out?
I have solidified what we have signed up for with the CAA, but no coach has stepped forward yet to say, I would like to coach that. That includes volleyball, sand volleyball, soccer, tennis, golf, chess. Am I leaving one off? I think, the Frisbee golf.
Okay.
Right now in the state, in our organization, Frisbee golf does not have enough participants to happen. Only 2 schools have signed up for it, us and somebody else. And he said if they get to 5, he being the gentleman in charge of the AA, the director, if we get to 5 schools, they will offer it immediately. They're working on that right now.
My next question is, you mentioned GarageBand. Do you have that figured out completely? Or is
that might be one of the closer ones that we have. And Mr. David Shantz is helping me out with that as
okay.
contact who might be doing it. And we would charge $15 a day. Yeah, I think I listed it on that list, correct?
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think I mentioned it to you before, and so I did. I brought my kids there, but Alice Cooper has Solid Rock Teen Center, and there is one in Phoenix and there's one in Mesa, and their center is completely free. And I spoke to the director in Mesa, and they have they'd like to open a conversation with our school if you wanted to start a program through them, because they have all sorts of music classes and GarageBand is one of them.
Could you send me that contact and I will make that call this week?
Yeah, and it's a free facility.
Sure.
It's pretty amazing, and they have classes from 2 to 7 Monday through Friday.
Would our parents have to take their kids there?
Our parents would have to take our kids there, but if it's something that's organized with a set group of kids, maybe the community, we can figure that all out within the parents that would be going there.
Okay.
But it's still I think it's a good contact, and it's also free, which I think is a solid option since we're just kind of still in recovery mode.
Well, and a $15 a day fee per kid might cover transportation to and from the school, after school to the center as well. That might be what the fee is for, is if they're covering everything else.
It's an amazing facility. Larry and I did a walkthrough, and it's brand new. They're still in the soft opening phase, but they have every type of class that you would need to put a performance on stage if you were to think of Alex Cooper from art.
Crossroads.
I'm sorry.
What are the Crossroads?
I'm going to say Country Club in Maine.
Okay.
But they have guitar, drum, mixing, editing, makeup, dancing, art classes, garage band. So they have a whole, and then kids can take additional private classes if they so choose. I believe that those are for a fee with instructors, but they do have group classes 2 to 7 Monday through Friday that are all free. And it's a teen center. It's specific for 12 to 17. And I did mention our school and that, we wanted to get music back in, and they said, have the director reach out to me and we'll see what we can, start the conversation.
Any other questions about the activity fees or thoughts on approving the waiver of those fees if it would be an economic hardship for anyone? Okay, well, then I will, this is somewhat technical, the way the state does it. So I will move to adopt the activity fees we've just discussed. That's the first thing. I'll stop there.
I even missed that. Move to adopt the activity fees with what?
That we've just discussed.
Oh, that we've just discussed. Okay.
Or that would be the book club, circus, homework lab, garage band, string guitar, fencing, chess club, and athletics.
We had we had archery in the past. Would that be part of the curriculum, or has no one talked about that as an after-school club?
We have not had anyone come forward and say they want to do that yet. If someone wanted to, I'm not adverse to doing it. I know Mr. Friedman has the actual equipment and knows how to train people from movement and games. So I would not say no to that. But I do not know that he wants to do that yet, as we are also looking for him. If you didn't know, he's an accomplished musician and guitarist, and we're hoping he would teach guitar as it's listed on there. And our music teacher, our choir teacher, has put her name in to start bringing strings back to elementary kids for those who want to sign up for after school program, which is a year earlier than putting it in the classroom, but at least her thought process is I can get some kids started. So I was happy to hear that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Greg, do we need to second?
Yes, I need somebody to second the motion, then we'll pause for discussion, if any other, and then we'll take a vote.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, thanks. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? That is unanimous. The motion carries. All right, so then the second piece of this is that I will move to authorize the executive director to waive all or part of the activity fee if it creates an economic hardship for a student.
Second.
Thank you, Danielle. Any discussion?
I guess who defines hardship, or is there a protocol or a worksheet or formula?
I think that's something that Frank is going to have to develop criteria for of what constitutes economic hardship. Given the scale of fees we're talking about here, I think we could probably operate pretty well in the honor system. But if somebody's saying I can't afford this, but my kid would like to do it.
Greg, it has been my experience in other districts, because all districts have this type of policy in order to not withhold participation from anyone who wants to participate based on economic reasons. And really the issue is they sit with me and just tell me, I just can't afford it. Can you help me for this year? And the plain truth is that should be enough. I don't know that we should go into detail. It's $15. It's not going to break us. It's just not. So if someone has the courage to come say that, you usually just work with people on that. And I have no problem doing that.
Thank you.
All right. April, I must be tired. Did we take a vote yet?
Yeah.
We did.
No, this was the, we're in the discussion phase.
Got it. Okay.
Frank waving.
Any other questions or discussion? All right. All those in favor? Okay. That's unanimous. The motion carries. We're all squared away there. All right. Next up. Some of the contractors for the concrete slab that will be the base of the new wood shop and then the block wall of the high school fell through because those contractors weren't licensed, I think was the issue, and they refused to get licensed. So Frank had to secure a couple different bids. So the one for the concrete slab is a total cost now of $13,553.09. So because that, and Frank, that's a slight increase from the previous one, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So because it's gone up, it falls outside of the approval that we gave last time we talked about this. So we need to approve it again. We have plenty of ESSER funds to pay for this, so I don't really think it's an issue. There's currently zero financial impact to the school for this, other than we have less of this free federal money to use for other things down the road. All right, so I will move to approve the new concrete slab bid for $14,000 or less.
I can second that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tanner. And Nellie for also wanting to jump in. All right, any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Motion carries. Okay. Then pull up the other bid. So this one, the total amount is, and this is for the block wall by the high school. The total amount is $10,219.44, with the option to add stucco and paint for another $1,800, which would bring the total, if we selected those options, to $12,019.44, which I think is up about $2,000 from the previous bid.
That's correct.
And Frank, are you wanting to add the stucco and the paint?
I do. I just want it first class. I want everything looking first class. If you've seen the white fence in the front, I think you can agree that looks first class. And I really want the high school, I want to spruce that up down there, give them the opportunity to then put a mural on the inside and possibly put some signage for the identifying the high school on the outside. So I would like that all ready to go.
All right. Then I will move to approve the bid for the block wall by the high school for $12,500 or less.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Nellie. Any other discussion? You're on mute, April.
Was I unmuted that whole time? Clicking and clacking? Sorry. What was that number? You said 12,000 what?
12,500.
12,500. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Yeah, okay. All right, Danielle, joining us at the end to make it unanimous. A motion carries. Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed the second. Who seconded that?
Nellie.
Okay, thanks, Nellie.
Okay. And we've got another set of invoices to approve for legal expenses. Given the confidential nature of this, it is related to legal expenses based on claims made by a former employee of the school, described as in more detail on the confidential message to the board. So I will move to approve. Let me find them. The first one, move to approve the payment of the invoice to Squire Pet and Boggs in the amount of $12,490.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. And then there's one more. And the good news on this one is that even though it's much smaller, they did make an error, so it's actually half of what it was. So I will move to approve the payment of the second invoice to Squire Pet and Boggs in the amount of $65.50.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? All right, that's unanimous and carries, and we are out of the finance section of our agenda.
Gregory,
Yes.
I thought you had to approve the list of field trips.
Well, there's not, we would approve the expenses associated with the field trips, but I don't think we have that yet. So,
No, the reason for it was, and this is coming from Jessica, if people want to donate their tax credit money to field trips, the board has to approve in 2 steps, like you just did in the other one, that, okay, we're going to approve this set of field trips and we approve the tax credit money can be used for it.
well, I think there's a misunderstanding there then, because what we have to approve is the fees associated with that activity, and then we have to approve waiving those fees. So until we know what the fees are,
Okay.
we can't actually do it.
Okay, I understand. She thought it could be done in a blanket vote on at least K through 8. These are all the field trips we're taking that match our curriculum.
Yeah, I don't, that's not the way I read the guidance from the
Okay.
Department of Revenue.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right. They're just very particular, and having gone recently through an audit of all of our meeting minutes, I know how they look at, the way that we describe the things that we're doing. And I know that if it doesn't match exactly the way they say it, we'll have a finding that we didn't do it correctly, and they'll make us do it again. So, but that said, it was a wonderful list of field trips. And I'm very optimistic to see it happen for the kids this year, because I know my kids, at the very least, have been really missing doing all of those things. So as soon as we get the list of fees associated with those, we'll take care of it and make sure we can use the tax credit money for that.
Okay.
All right. So back to you, Frank. What else is going on at the school? We got your report, of course, but anything you want to highlight, or anything additional?
Tomorrow is our last day of our teacher training, and I'm very happy to report that it has gone marvelously. Our 2 trainers are just outstanding teachers to adults. Remember, you could be a really good teacher to children and not be so good with adults. We got really lucky that these 2 ladies are exceptional. I have every intention that we can do this again for another 2 years, and that these people involved would come back for more training, and that we would start another class next year for first step teachers, so that we would be running them simultaneously and be able to, let's say there was 2 EC teachers in this year's group, and there are 2 EC teachers in next year's group, we can do pullouts and focus just on EC for them. Or if there were 2 second grade teachers this year and 2 or 3 next year, we can let them focus more time on their individual grades. The teachers and I have had this conversation already, and they are gung-ho about it. I need to make sure, because I do see Laura out in the attendees, and of course Michelle representing the parent group, and I don't want to leave Danielle out. Danielle every other day made us a special tea for lunch, and it was outstanding. And the parents, of course, they sponsored the whole training with the funding. We did get 6 people who were paying customers, and that went right back to the parent group. So I think the last time Laura and I talked about this, and Michelle, they put out about $7,000 and made about 5. So they put our 10 teachers through the training for a little over $2,000, which is remarkable. Huge kudos to Laura and Michelle. Special thank you to Laura, who came every other day to make sure these 16 teachers had breakfast and lunch and drinks and treats. And she was there just taking care of us. And it was outstanding. And every one of those teachers who saw that happening from our parents are highly impressed. And so am I. So the teacher training, a 10. For first year, we're moving forward. It went very well. The contemplation. As you know, the main part is finished, and groups are meeting on the side to finalize a document that will come back to the August 3rd final day training. And I don't want to say final because there will be follow-up, but that day is a day we are going to put together something that the group will be asked, can you support this document? Because that document is going to go to the board to then be accepted or not accepted, as these are the things we want to adopt that are coming from recommendations from the contemplation. I can honestly say everyone there has been open and honest and willing to work with each other. And I will say it wasn't easy. Everyone had to kind of put their heart and soul into it. And while there were smiles many days, there were some tears some days. But the hard work is being done. And all of these people who are on that exercise need to be commended for showing up each time and trying to answer and resolve what was behind us. Danielle and John, would you concur with some of those statements? Can you hear me, Danielle? John?
I thought I was going to give John the opportunity to speak first or second.
Or Danielle. Yeah, Frank, I agree with what you said. I hope that people feel heard and that they are healing so that we can move forward. I'm with you, Frank. I'm moving forward and I want to be there with you. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
And I do appreciate the time that everyone has spent and again, being vulnerable and humble to have conversations and share things that are so personal and so private. And it was, there were a lot of tears and a lot of smiles and conversations that, you know, we could start that we didn't know who to talk to or who to go to or who should we have that conversation with and what we can do to really thrive.
So those two, the teacher training and the contemplation, as you know, took a lot of time. We got one day left of the teacher training. And while all that was happening, we were trying to hire a first grade teacher. And woohoo! We found a wonderful first grade teacher. I think everyone is going to be very happy with this young man. He was a Waldorf student through, I think, either 5th or 6th grade. Went on to be a graduate at ASU in political science. And the last 2 years, he has been working as an assistant to senators in the state Senate. And I asked him, you want to leave that job? And he said, absolutely. I want to do something to pay back my community. I'm the person I am today because of Waldorf schools. And that was just the beginning of the interview. He wowed all of us. Again, I think you're all going to really like him. Denzel Rustin Passage. I want to make sure I say his last name right. He is going to go by Mr. Rusty for the kids. So we're very happy to have a first grade teacher named. Next week on Tuesday, we interview for a couple of special ed aides that we need. And on Wednesday, we interview for the early childhood aide. And then I believe we'll be done hiring. I want to publicly thank Dr. Andrew Darian for all his help in the interview process to help find Denzel and take the reins on some of this stuff while I was in the teacher trainings, because I can't do two things at a time. And Dr. Andrew has been wonderful at that.
Excellent. Well, good news on many fronts, and thank you for a lot of hard work over the summer.
You're welcome.
Nice. Well, unless there are any other questions for Frank, I think we can move on to a discussion about the letter we got that came out of the contemplation exercise from Teresa and Peter and Joan. And Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, or Mr. Tanner or Danielle, it sounds like this is more of a summary of where things are currently, but there's actually, well, we don't need to take any action on this tonight. This is just where people stand, and that sometime in early August, we'll actually get a more formal, this is what we want. And can different pillars of the community support these various things?
That's correct.
Okay. So then I guess we should, even though it's tentative, I think it's worth talking about some of the things that came out of it. Because there were a couple work groups, I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology, but who focused on the board and how the board can, what it's doing well and how it can improve in supporting the three different pillars of the community, including ourselves. So the first one was the staff, faculty, and administration pillar, and we can all read, so I don't want to read it to you all. But Danielle or Mr. Tanner, I would love to hear your thoughts as to the process for each of these things, your takeaway, particular things we should be thinking about as we wait for the more formal document to come in a few weeks.
But with the summary that just rolled out, it would be nice to start some action, which we've already started implementing today. So thank you, Michelle, for representing our parent body and being with us today, and Gregory for extending that invitation. Of course, the board being open to the discussion. But we want to already start some of the momentum of things that we are working on. So this is our 30-day to solidify how we can implement some of those suggestions, or just taking a look at the feedback. Do we agree in some areas, or are we feeling that we might want to focus on a different area? So that was one of the reasons I wanted to get all of our answers and thoughts so we could work together as a group and carry that forward throughout the community to do basically some of the same work. And there was a survey that went out to our community also that had a lot of the similar questions that we worked on. So again, to expand that out so that we have a shared vision, we can come together and know that we do want the same things, and we want to encourage the Waldorf inspired curriculum as best we can, as well as implementing all the requirements that we need to, but being more in the relationship rapport, staying together, is we wouldn't be here without each other, and we wouldn't be here without our children, and how we all fit that together. So it would be nice to start some of that action now so that we can measure how we want to implement that and how we are making progress towards that. So we've got something measurable. We have a 30-day measure, and then we'll come back in a 90-day measure to see if we've had that growth, or if we do agree upon those areas that we want to work towards.
And so the 30-day measure, is that the column on this that says progress to see by August 3rd?
Yes, however, end of July would be our 30. Is August our 90? No. Yes, close.
I think it was the 30, like that was when we could meet, was August 3rd, after the 30 days. So I think that's why it's when it is.
Okay, so for purposes of immediate action, we can focus on this progress to see by August 3rd column. And those are the things we, the board, should think about doing in the near term, if I'm understanding correctly. I know there's a longer list of stuff that people would like to see happen, in the 90 days out. Okay, all right, so let's take it by pillar then. So starting with staff, faculty, and administration, so the challenge that the board has in this area is some of our current and recent past responses to staff, faculty, and administration have come across dismissive, defensive, and emotional.
There was one word left off, which some agreed that was also threatening.
Okay. And the progress that people would like to see by August 3rd is one, bringing it to the attention that people feel this way, an open letter from the participants of the exercise. So we'll look forward to that. I don't think there's anything we specifically can do right now on that. And that we would create a position for an invitee to have a place on the board meetings. And it says Frank will fill this position. So Frank, you're already at all of our meetings. So I think we've got that one covered. And then we would set a date to participate in a workshop. But I'm not clear what it sounds like a workshop about communication skills, but I'm not clear how we set a date for that before we identify who's going to lead it.
Document, because that document isn't finalized yet, there's a couple of conversations about what workshop means. Example, one of the topics was to make sure all of our board members had 2 types of training now that they're serving on the board. One was about state charter school training, which we have a rep that will come and sit with the board for 4 hours or 2 hours or 2 meetings of 2 hours to update all board members on rules and regs of being part of a charter school association. And the other was for all board members to get more training in anthroposophy and Waldorf ways. And I think we've already talked a little bit about you guys getting someone to speak 20 minutes before every board meeting or once a month before every board meeting to make sure Waldorf philosophy and anthroposophy is incorporated in to board meetings, and with each board member knowing, being educated as much as they can on Waldorf. Then there was a different topic of, should the board have a day retreat with me in order to go over details of, while you see the stuff that's written down of, we would like you to do this, maybe it would be helpful for me to be there to say, here's why they would like you to do this. Here's how they voiced how they feel about that piece. And of course, I've done board retreats before. I think it would be a wonderful idea for us to get together and do something. As you know, though, we're kind of running out of time. There's only 4 weeks before the first day of school. Not that they're saying it has to happen before the first day of school. But certainly they would want it to happen before September, I would think. Danielle and John, have I spoke out of turn at all? Is there something you want to add to that? Michelle, you as well, you're in the room listening to that. John, I think Danielle wants you to go first.
No problem. Thank you, Danielle. No, I think, Frank, you summed it up. There is the state component. There's the anthroposophical component. And that's a lot. I mean, you have to. I've been through those state trainings, and you have somebody come in, and it really has to happen outside of a board meeting. The anthroposophical piece certainly can happen, as Frank said, in the first 20 minutes or so of a monthly meeting. Since we're meeting bi-monthly, I think it's a bit much to do that every week. But I think we certainly could do that once a month. I think that's reasonable, and that way the board is getting input on from both places. And yes, Frank mentioned doing a retreat. That's something that's been done in the past and certainly could be done, once a year or something like that, or whatever Frank sees necessary. Is that, Frank, am I accurate?
Yes, I think you repeated me very well. That's what I think too. Danielle,
Yeah,
concur?
I mean, that's the story.
I wanted to also mention with people's perceptions and intentions, that even though it may not have been, and I was also directly, one of my emails that I thought was simple and diplomatic. I had someone come up to like, no, I thought that was just kind of standoffish. And I said, that's when I should have probably just picked up the phone. And, I did apologize to her. That was not my intent, but being accountable for that, because again, that was how she received the message. And so when whether or not we know how our message came across, we can still acknowledge that, that was not our intention. And yes, we are accountable for that. Those were our words. So whatever it is that we said or didn't say, perhaps it's not an email. Perhaps we do pick up the phone, or at least make that statement of, that I'm sorry, or that wasn't my intent. This is actually what I meant, or that didn't come across properly, or however lost in translation emails are. But it's something that we can still acknowledge that happened. That was your perception. That wasn't my experience, but it happened. And we want to, of course, move forward from that and do a better job.
Daniel, thank you for that explanation. I think your hearing might be tapping against the wire to your headphones. It's creating a weird kind of feedback that makes it hard to hear you.
Would you like me to repeat? Is this better?
Yeah, oh, that's so much better.
So making the statement, or whether it's a communication of when we've sent out an email, and I was, again, part of that. Someone acknowledged or let me know that one of my emails did not come off across nicely, and that was not my intent, but I'm still accountable for that. That was their experience. It wasn't my intention, but I'm accountable for that. And so instead of always responding via email, perhaps that would have been a better option, to pick up the phone and have that conversation with that individual, or to really let somebody know that I just can't help you with that, but please talk to so-and-so. But it comes across nicer when you're talking with someone versus saying it in an email. And the other was just acknowledging that, that again, that wasn't my intention, or I didn't mean that to come across this way, or I apologize that sounded that way, or maybe I was too harsh. That we can still make that acknowledgement for that person's experience or perception of our message.
So if I'm reading this document correctly and listening to Danielle, it sounds like in addition to the things that Frank, you've described, there's an S that we, the board, do some sort of workshop on public communication.
I believe that the retreat, or whatever we want to call it, that communication, visibility, Danielle or John, would you add something to that? But that would be something that I would facilitate for the board to bring to you, to say, here's some examples of parents saying, this could have been different.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting right there when this happened with Danielle, and I can tell you she handled it with grace and was able to accept that was your reality. I'm so sorry. I did not mean it to be that way. And you got to see these two individuals talk now. It's wonderful because the air was cleared and they're past it now. Danielle, am I making that up, or do you feel that's a fair statement to make?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. So I think me sitting to share, and Danielle and John, who have been in there, to share with all of you some of the details so you can understand how this happens, why they feel that way, and then we talk through what do we need to do differently to not leave our parents, who are our constituents, feeling like this.
And faculty.
And faculty, that is correct. That is correct. Because it is clear that coming from the parents, that this was one of the things, and I don't even know if any of you were on the board when this started to eat away at trust. But this was the beginning of it, is no one would be an ear to listen to them. And when they did, it was defensive and not in a mode of, I hear you and let me see if this is a problem I can solve. Again, I'm not looking at a weekend retreat. I'm saying, can we do something on a Friday morning from 8 to noon and have lunch together, and we'll sit down and I'll lay out an agenda for the 8 of us to sit in a room and make this happen. I'd love for it to happen prior to the first day of school, but I know we are cutting that close now. So,
And return of public comment. It's a nice.
Right. I see that later down. I was trying to take this like piece by piece.
I was trying to pick the easier ones to to tackle.
and all of those can be discussed at this mini retreat, if you will, because discussion is what really needs to take place, not just, okay, check, we're going to do number 1, check, we're going to do number 2. There needs to be discussion amongst you guys who are also parents. Like there was discussion on this committee, and they're hoping I can facilitate that for you. And I believe I can, of course, but the tricky issue is, can we decide on a date and time to get this done, all of us together?
Right. Well, and we're missing 2 people right now. So I don't think we can set a time tonight. And the other thing I'm thinking about is, how do we do this and make sure we're not running afoul of the open meeting laws?
I think John can speak to that. Didn't you say, John, you've been involved in a retreat prior?
Yes, both the retreat and also state trainings.
Yeah, I guess that's the way to characterize it, is a training or something like that, because nothing we would be doing would
Be board business.
be board business. Nothing would impact the school. It's just for our own growth and learning.
Example, if during this training retreat meeting, I'm able to present how that committee felt with the why and what happens next, you guys can then, you don't make any decision there, you listen, and the next board meeting, if one of the things you're going to do is say, it's been brought to our attention that it would be a good idea for us to invite the state trainer in to bring us all up to date. Do I make a motion for that? Then you go through the voting process at the next board meeting. What we just described are 3 separate things.
Yeah.
The state training, the philosophy, anthroposophy part, and then, of course, if you decide to go back to allowing public comment, that all comes at a next board meeting, even though you're going to hear out from me what those people said. You're not voting on it there.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that does make sense. I think that could work. If it's in the form mostly of a presentation from you, I think we get into trickier territory when we start discussing things and trying to say, well, at the next meeting, I could support X or Y. That's the conversation. I don't think we can have.
No. And I will be very careful in how I word things to remain open-ended so that you are not asked something that could influence April. Because that's part of it too, is you're not supposed to be influencing each other on a way to vote. You're supposed to be just listening.
Right.
So it's not hard to do. I've been involved in it before.
Yeah. So Frank, do you want to circulate dates that work for you prior to the school year? And just in an email to the board, and we'll see if we can find something that fits for that.
Yes.
Okay.
I would love though, since Dan and
Kirsten.
here, if one of you, because they get an email on this, they're not going to understand the backstory. So it would be great if one of you would talk to them and say, hey, this is what this means. We're hoping to do this. Just so they're not, because what if they don't like the idea and just say, no, that doesn't, I'm busy. Well, we want them to understand the importance of what we're doing because that's coming out in this discussion right now. So I'd love for maybe one of you to take one person, someone call Kirsten and another person call Dan and explain it all to them. And I'll send that email out tomorrow with a couple of dates.
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to one of them. Danielle, you'll take another one? We can coordinate offline about who's doing.
Well, Danielle, Dan, I think it's just a given.
I'll reach out to Kirsten. Okay. All right, so that makes sense on that. We'll try and get something squared away there. So that's the staff and faculty piece of it. Then there's how we support the parent body pillar. And the ask there by August 3rd is to see the board's love story and bios on the website with video preferred, since we are working on face-to-face communication and for public comment being reinstituted. So any other texture or background that we need to know about there?
I think that one's straightforward, but go ahead. Excuse me.
The love story part is very creative and very impactful because we each have a story about why we're at Waldorf and how it happened to come to this. And you'd be amazed at the stories that were told about people's love stories with Waldorf. And so they think, and I agree, it would be a great idea if a couple board members would post their love story so that you are seen in that light as well. Because you're a parent like anybody else. And there's a reason you're at Waldorf. And I think there's a feeling that would go a long way to all of our other parents so they can relate to why you're here. While it sounds easy, please know you're sharing some important emotional stuff sometimes. And maybe not. Maybe yours is a really simple one, but the ones we've listened to in there can be complex and heartwarming. And I definitely think that the idea of the board being involved like a parent is a really good thing. John, Danielle, Michelle, do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely. I think parents hearing your perspective will really help you become more almost human to them. So it would be
Almost.
good for you. Yes.
More human than human.
It would be good to be perceived as not the evil corporate board.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, does anyone object to posting something like that on the website? Waiting for April to catch up.
I don't object. I'm into it. I'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you, April.
All right. Well, that one's easy enough. Public comment, I think it's straightforward, like you said, Danielle. I have reservations about this currently without some other commitments from parents, because times have changed, but at the time we stopped doing it, we got a lot of hateful, like just openly hateful public comments. And I really don't have an appetite to start getting yelled at.
But we're at an advantage with Zoom. You know, you just mute.
It's true. Yeah.
Oh, time.
Yeah, true. You make a good point.
Those were Frank's. I can't take credit.
Gregory, I can respect how I think at least 3 of you were on when the decision was made to remove public comment. And the backstory I've heard is it really was hard to control. They would talk over you. They would use foul language. They would make threats. And yet we are in a situation right now with the 3 pillars, the staff, the parents, and the board, which, as you know, are the basis of working together in a Waldorf school. And each of those pillars we have found in this contemplation has got to compromise on something. Not everything on that form everyone's shaking their head at, saying, yeah, let's do that, because we wouldn't be here if that was the situation. There are some difficult things on those forms that I believe each of the pillars are going to have to make a compromise to say, I'm willing to do this because you're asking, that's something you need. And then that side has to be able to say, okay, I'm willing to do this. Are you willing to do that? And if all 3 groups openly and honestly and genuinely compromise on some things, we will move forward. We will. That's my feeling in that room. If there's resistance to that, that's going to be a challenge, because one of the pillars crumbles. The other one says, I'm not playing. If they're not going to do what I'm hoping for, why should I give up what's something that's precious to me? And I really think these compromises can be met. And I'm also getting the feeling in the room, not just from John and Danielle and Michelle, but many others, that yes, these compromises can be met. And this is something we can talk about more at a retreat as to the why this is something that could be supported.
Yeah. And maybe, I personally would like to hear that before I commit to, bringing public comment back. Because I think I just need more of the background there. And the other reservation I had about public comment always is that it's a one-way street. It's a public comment to the board, but we don't get to respond because it's not on our agenda that we can respond to the topics that are brought up in the public comment. So I think there's a limited exception. We can respond narrowly to a critique in some way, but it's very limiting, and it's not conducive to a dialogue, which I think is what, if I'm reading the spirit of this letter that we got, is really what the parents are asking for, is some type of dialogue with the board, and so that they can feel heard. And I'm still not convinced today or 3 years ago that public comment is the way to make that dialogue happen. But I'm open to differing opinions.
And Gregory said you don't feel that is the solution. Do you have something else you could offer?
Well, one of the other things mentioned on here is a town hall, and I found that those are very effective at allowing people to ask questions, because then because instead of "you're doing this wrong and I hate you," you know,
That's on there too, to give positive feedback.
to make it, you know, I'm somewhat tongue in cheek, but
But when
if somebody can ask a question of why are you doing this? How did this decision happen? And then you get to respond. Then it's much more productive conversation.
And I'm curious, have you ever had an effective town hall meeting at Desert Marigold? Have you ever attended an effective town hall meeting at Desert Marigold?
I have. Yeah, I mean, just last summer. I don't know if you were able to make the one.
The one we did on Zoom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we only had one, but I agree with you. That one was a step in the right direction.
Yeah. So
So that was the first one.
yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
In my opinion, and from what I hear from other parents, is the town halls don't happen often enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I do get that, you know, you get criticism, but you could also hear good things, and just people people might have their opinions on things, and maybe it would be a good change. They don't have to be hateful and whatever, but that was also my point of sharing your love story, you know, letting people know that, you know, you are committed to this also, might show them that you love the school too, and you're committed.
So, Michelle, what is your thought on, say we had a town hall every month? Would that be frequent enough that people would feel, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm just trying to gauge, you know, how much people really just want to be able to make a public comment to the board and walk away versus how much people actually want a conversation?
In my opinion, once a month might be a bit too much. Once every other month or something of that nature might be better, but maybe it's because I'm already committed to things monthly and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that people just want to be heard, and you're at a better place now than you have been in the past. And turning off public commenting, even though I didn't, you know, participate as much in that, it felt like my voice was just squashed. Just we don't want to hear about it. So some of the comments that I did make weren't, you know, directly at the board. And I know, you know, I'm different than other people, but sometimes those comments were just information, just, you know, this is what's going on, and I'd like you to hear about it. So it doesn't always have to be hateful.
Agreed. Nellie.
First of all, Danielle and John, Frank, Michelle, thank you very much for putting the time into the contemplation. I think that it's a huge, huge factor in what's going to help the community move forward. I'm new. This is my first year, so it would be unfair to me. I think that I can have a say, but it's unfair to say we should go back and do this right away because I wasn't a part of what transpired over the past 3 years. But here are some things and thoughts that I can agree with. I think public comments are important but one-sided, Greg, as you said, one-sided public comments are not helpful. Town halls, I think, are important, and I think that that gives the opportunity to have the conversation. One-sided conversations don't work, two-sided conversations do work. And if two-sided conversations can only happen in a town hall, then I think that we need to incorporate them once a month, once a quarter. And then is also the option of having before our board meetings a section where people can submit questions, and then we can allocate 10 or 15 minutes to say, okay, this question was submitted and this is our response. So that people are still a question, so we're not looking at comments and shutting them off because we don't like what people are saying, but people are still allowed to submit questions to the board meeting. And then we can put it on our agenda that we're allocating this section to answer questions and limit our time to only being, 15 or 20 minutes allocating for that time. Is that also an option? I think, pillars are important. Danielle, I'm still working on my responses. I definitely post a bio, and April, I know I owe you a picture. And I just think that if people need to be heard, we're doing the contemplation so they can be heard. If they want to be heard, I think it's fair that we hear their questions, but I think it's also fair that as the board, we're in a space where we're allowed to answer them. Does that make sense?
Oh, if we decided to, or if it was something we wanted to respond to, we could add that to an agenda item for another meeting or the next meeting. It's my understanding.
Michelle,
if needed.
Right. Michelle, do you feel that is a good conversation, that we're opening up a conversation to adding some kind of a solution to heal this part of the pillar?
I do. And also going back to what Danielle was saying about putting it on the agenda, I do remember at one point that they had that same thing where they said that they would listen to the public comments, and then at the next meeting they would discuss it if there was anything that they felt needed to be discussed. I don't know if that could be put back in, or...
Am I correct in assuming that before COVID, board meetings were in person and attended by the public if wanted? Okay. So therefore, then public comment could have easily gotten out of hand.
Yeah.
I'll have to share some
Go ahead.
thoughts on this if I can. Because we're, at the beginning of this conversation, we were kind of laughing about public comment like it was a joke. And Gregory said they were hateful comments. Yes, they were hateful. They were abusive. And I can only speak for myself and my own experience, but I was raised by a narcissist who was verbally and emotionally abusive. And I can't tell you how much those comments are affecting. And I know I'm not the only person who, has their own issues. And I'm not here to say no public comment because it's hard for April Boohoo. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there were some weight to these comments, and they often were just that. They were just comments. No one was asking questions. They were just spewing vitriol. And it was really ugly. And it was very hard after that, hearing that or sharing that publicly, because at one point we were doing public comment over Zoom and we were reading it out loud. And then you have to continue to have a meeting and to be engrossed in the business of the board. And that can be very difficult when you have just heard very hurtful, hateful things, regardless of whether it's personal or not. We can all move on and do what we need to do. And I'm dealing with my own stuff and just as everybody else. But I just want to say that to explain the types of comments we were getting. It wasn't just, oh, you guys are messing up. That's not what we were getting. We can handle that. We can take some constructive criticism. We can take some ideas. Those are great, and we get emails with lots of great ideas. I mean, Nellie, you're a great example of that. We got lots of ideas from you before you even, anticipating joining the board. You would share lots of ideas. That's great. We love that. I love going to parent council and listening to all the parents talk about their ideas for fundraising for the board and so on and so forth. So we definitely want parent involvement. We want parents to communicate with us and share with us constructive criticism and ideas. We are not interested in being abused. And so all that to say, certainly at some point when we feel comfortable, public comment makes a lot of sense. I would suggest, for the sake of all of us, that we put it at the end of our meeting if we do choose to add it. And obviously we can address, any questions and answers we need to do at our next meeting. But I'm in line with Gregory in regards to town halls and the effectiveness. I think that's a great place to start, is just up the amount of town halls that we're having. I mean, maybe just setting those dates right off the bat for the next year so people can anticipate, okay, this will be my opportunity to have a conversation, and out of that, maybe that relationship and that rapport will grow. And then that love and trust will be back and public comment will not be an issue anymore. And we can have it and accept it and it will be productive, because that's what we want, is productive public comment. That's what we're looking for.
Well, and even when we decide to reintroduce it, if it is abused or if it's not handled properly, I mean, we can always remove it again. Nothing has to be permanent.
Yeah. So here's what I'm thinking is, one of the other recommendations we got was that we should get a refresh as a board about the state regulations and charter schools. And one piece of that as a board member is complying with the open meeting laws. And if we have a rep who can come talk to us about this stuff, I think one of the things we need to bring up is, we want to have a public discussion with members of the community where we get to answer their questions as a board. How do we do that? Can we make it an agenda item? Like, can we have, every other meeting where we have the town hall section of the meeting where it's just going to be random questions? And is that consistent with the open meeting law? And see what a rep says and see if we can get comfortable with the idea of doing it that way. And then the other thing, Danielle, to your point, is establishing some ground rules about what is acceptable conduct during a town hall, and then enforcing those rules if things get out of hand. Danielle, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, I have the statute up on an individual public officer may respond to criticism, ask staff to review an item, or ask that an item be placed on a future agenda, but he or she may not dialogue with the presenter or collectively discuss, consider, or decide an item that is not listed on the agenda. Note that individual members of the public body may respond to criticism by individuals who address the public body during the call to the public, but the public body may not collectively discuss or take action on the complaint unless the matter is specifically listed on the agenda.
Right. Yeah, and that's my memory of why this was limited. But at the same time, this is why I want to have a discussion with the guy, right? Because it's like if we have all seven of us together, and the whole purpose of the getting together is to have a town hall, why can't we do that? All right, Mr. Tanner.
So I'm glad we got to that place. I think what we need to do is schedule the first town hall meeting for the first quarter, and in that way, Mr. Murzio gives Frank some time to establish what he wants to say, what he wants to address in that meeting. And I remind everyone, the work of the board is financial and legal. And Frank, as the executive director, should be taking the criticism and the ideas. We don't need to know if, we need a second pig, or, the rooms, the color of the rooms should be purple and not blue, or whatever that is. That's not really for us to decide. Those types of things can be decided elsewhere, and they should be talked about. They absolutely should be discussed. But there is an issue that Danielle brought up, and that is about the agenda items. And I think we have to be careful about deciding and talking about things that are outside of the agenda.
Right. I mean, you make a good point, Mr. Tanner, is that our scope as a board is at the same time broad and quite narrow. It's the entire financial health of the school and legal health of the school, which can be broad topics, but a lot of the day-to-day operational things we don't have the competence to answer them correctly or to deal with them really, because we're not there. But I like the idea of scheduling something for the first quarter for a town hall. But I still have the question, and with the statute that Danielle just read to us, ostensibly it means that less than a quorum of the board can go, because otherwise we're having a public meeting for board business where we, and then we can't just take open questions and engage in a dialogue. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place on this one, unless our state rep has some creative ideas about what we can do. All right.
It should be easy if Gregory to say these board members are allowed to go to we'll make it decide, 3 board members go to the town hall and the rest of them stay home. As inconvenient as that may be for the other board members. I mean, that's just, until we hear from the state rep, that's kind of how it has to be at that type of a meeting. Of course, you get to a big festival and we may all be there, but that's a different circumstance.
Right.
I can only hope.
Right. I mean, we're not gathering as a board to do board business. So, yeah. All right. Well, unless anyone objects, I think we should find a date for a town hall for first quarter. And like Mr. Tanner said, pick 3 people to go and attend. Let's see. We don't have the benefit of Dan or Kirsten being here.
What if we had Frank? What if we just said, Frank, would you please come up with a date? I think he's a little bit on the spot right now to do that. But if he sat down with his calendar and came back in 2 weeks with a date, Frank, would that be all right with you?
Of course.
And that way you're not on the spot, which certainly we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to anyone.
Yeah.
John, you mean a date for a town hall, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hard thing to do. And we'd probably do it in the first 3 or 4 weeks of school, correct?
I'm sure that would be a very good idea, but we would want to make sure that it fit with your plans.
Sure. Yeah, I can do
Can
that.
it just not be at a Saturday at 3 p.m.?
Yeah. That was
I think it's best to stay away from weekends between you and me, guys.
I 100% agree on that. I think that's fair. Frank was to come up with a date out of all of us, we would be able to, our calendars would probably match with at least 3 of us.
Michelle, does this seem like a reasonable approach? Does that feel good?
I think so. I think as long as the community has a place that they can actually talk, the most recent town hall was was more inclusive. But are we talking in-person town halls or are we talking Zoom? Because I know a lot of people felt it didn't feel like a community thing, and couldn't see faces of those who were talking and that type of thing too. So just trying to be inclusive of the community.
Yeah. So Michelle, I'm thinking in person, but I'm just one voice. What other types of things help with inclusivity? What are the other elements of that so that we can work more closely with that? What are there other recommendations that you might have?
So the other thing that was pointed out a couple times, and submitting questions beforehand, and even for in the board part, when they were reading the questions, it was a well-written email and that type of thing. And I know a few parents were like, oh, they're going to judge me on my writing because I'm not a writer or whatever it is. So I'm not going to email the board about anything. So just those little statements sometimes can hold a parent back from making a statement or even saying something good that's going on or giving advice. That's one thing. And then I would love it to be in person if, that's possible. But possibly also add a Zoom, I don't know, but the ability to, yes, the ability to have those parents who can't make it, to the school in person, but attend via Zoom, and they can see their parents that are attending via Zoom, and then also see what's going on at the town hall. So.
Okay. So Frank, are those ideas that we can incorporate?
Yes,
Okay.
not a problem.
And you and Michelle are old friends, so you'd be able to communicate on that and more.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Frank, has faculty mentioned anything extra? I know we were going through the pillar statements, but has there been any other?
No, no, that I know I'm on that subgroup, and really all the things that was read in the summary was part of our subgroup of things for the board. We didn't talk about what the faculty expects from is going to hold themselves accountable for, and what the faculty is hoping from the parents. That was not written to you guys, I don't think. Am I right in saying that? And we're not complete. My group is not complete. We meet next Tuesday to finish our task.
I think the last pillar that we haven't talked about, Danielle, is how we support each other. I mean, and the things on that list, at least for August 3rd, would be scheduling a date for a workshop, which Frank is going to help with, and then presenting a plan, making sure that our decisions are grounded in Waldorf ideals. And it says Joan to meet with board 20 minutes before each meeting for anthroposophy study. I think maybe rather than before the meeting, we just have her join the first 20 minutes of our meeting and have her talk to us about those things. Because I think there's benefit to us getting it, but also to the public being able to watch it too. And we can, hit a couple educational buckets that way, if Joan's up for it. But I think it says each meeting. I don't know if we need to have her come every 2 weeks, but once a month, maybe, like Mr. Tanner was saying.
Yes, that was discussed back and forth once a month, not necessarily every meeting.
And then the last thing is presenting a plan for accountability to each other and moving forward with changes. And I'm not clear on what is meant by that.
Can I have you repeat it, please?
Yeah, it says that one of the progress points to see by August 3rd is to present a plan for accountability to each other and moving forward with changes.
Okay, so when we agree on implementing something or adding an extra step, or if someone's going to step up to do an activity in particular, are we checking in with one another to say, oh, I got this, or let's do this together, or I like how you did that, or wait a minute, that wasn't okay? I think that's more of a checks and balances on our decisions.
Okay. And what would...
I didn't come up with that one, though. I don't know.
So I'm just trying to... It says we're going to have a plan for doing that. And, and by August 3rd, our next meeting is August 4th. Is that right, April?
I think we've done a lot of things in the plan. So maybe we just go through it as a line item of the things that we've already started to. Like, we're going to have Frank set a date for the town hall. We are inviting Frank to represent faculty, Michelle for parent body. We are going to decide to have Joan or someone facilitate our philosophy and the Waldorf training in the meetings, and that we're all present as much as possible and have a good excuse if we're not.
Danielle, the other thing is, this is not final yet.
Right. Right.
These are ideas listed. It may be that the final request to the staff or to the board or to the parents is only 3 of the 5 bullets that they've talked about, because our group has not overall called for consensus yet. And so you have a document that is a working, fluid document that they're giving you a summary on. It is not the final document yet. Does everyone in there agree that that is for real? That we did not decide anything yet, correct? Danielle?
Our group was pretty solid. We had a consensus among our group for the topics we discussed.
That was among the group. It wasn't presented to the other 2 groups yet.
So I think we've got a check-in that just came out, an email that just came out as a check-in on where we were in our progress for our 30-day.
Right, and we weren't ready. So we answered back, we're meeting Tuesday, but I didn't see the other 2 groups' final document yet. I only know what my group was talking about. And I thought that on August 3rd, we were all going to read each other's suggestions or recommendations and come to consensus as a large group where we stand on those. That's what I assumed is the last step.
So I thought my summary included everyone's, with the exception of whatever you didn't finish. And it was, again, things we could start to work on, but again, not finished, because we wanted to be able to bring it out to the community to say, this is what we've come up with and what we would want to work on first, or what would be more of a priority.
Okay, then I had a different understanding of it. I thought we were all going to try and reach consensus, all 21 of us, not in the 3 small groups. So I just misunderstood that.
I could have misunderstood as well. Michelle, do you have Mr. Tanner?
I was thinking the same thing as Danielle, that we were discussing it, and it's still a little fluid, but not. It's still a discussion. I also remember seeing all of those on Joan and Peter's the letter that came out. Was it last week, I think? Or yes, on the 6th, I believe it was. I thought all of us had something in there, but I could be wrong on that.
We're second guessing ourselves.
Is that where you remember seeing it, Danielle?
Yes.
Like a full, each group had a section or a couple pages on that.
Yeah, that's what I've been working from this evening. And I assume the August 3rd target date was things that we were going to try to work on that week. Well, hopefully we can get consensus on August 3rd about what it is we're all supposed to be doing. But in any event, I think we're largely in agreement as a board about the things that we want to do. So Danielle, I like your idea of using this living document as, a set of goals that we can work towards. And I think we've made great strides on that this evening. So I don't know that there's any more planning or a formal plan that we need to write out for accountability, other than referring back to this list of asks. Well, okay. I think that brings us to the end of the board-related topics on the contemplation exercise. So unless there's anything else we need to talk about on that front, we can move along. Okay, not hearing any objection to that. And I know that there are like 5 minutes left in the Suns game, so if anyone's desperate to watch the last few minutes, let's make this quick. So I will move to approve the minutes of our June 30th, 2020.
We're up by 1 point.
I need a second for that motion. Danielle, thank you.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. That brings us to the end of our meeting. And Nellie, if you could, I will move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's everybody. All right. Now, Nellie, if you could read the closing verse for us.
The most important task for humankind today and in the future is that we should learn to live together and understand one another. If this human fellowship is not achieved, all talk of development is empty. Rudolf Steiner.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for a good discussion tonight. We will see you.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.